I loved her. I really did. For 2 years, I gave her everything I had. My money, my time, my heart. I thought she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever met. I thought she loved me back. But she wasn't who I thought she was. Not even close. And when I finally found out the truth, it broke me. This is my story, and I need to tell it before I lose my mind. If our stories resonate with you, don't forget to like, comment, and tell us where you're watching from. This story was shared with us by one of our viewers. I arrived in Pattaya on a Thursday afternoon in March. The heat hit me the second I stepped off the plane. Thick, heavy, suffocating. I'd never felt anything like it back in Victoria. But I didn't mind. I wanted to feel something different. Anything different. I'd been numb for 6 years. Ever since the divorce. Ever since Janet walked out and took everything with her, except the silence she left behind. I was 68 years old, living alone in a unit that smelled like old wood and regret. And I hadn't touched another human being in so long I'd forgotten what it felt like. So when my mate Dave said he'd been to Thailand and it changed his life, I booked a ticket. I didn't tell anyone. Not my daughter Megan, not my mates. I just went. The first 2 nights I barely left the hotel. I walked around the pool, ate room service, watched CNN and wondered what the hell I was doing there. But on the 3rd night I couldn't stand the silence anymore. I showered, put on a clean shirt and walked down to Beach Road. The place was alive. Neon lights everywhere. Music thumping from every bar. Girls in tight dresses standing outside, smiling, waving, calling out to passing men. I felt like I'd landed on another planet. I walked for maybe 20 minutes before I saw a small karaoke bar tucked between a massage parlor and a 7-Eleven. It looked quieter than the rest, less intimidating. I went inside. The place was dim, lit by purple and red lights that made everything look softer than it was. There were maybe 10 people inside, a few older Western men like me, sitting alone with beers, a couple of Thai women on stage singing badly to a ballad I didn't recognize. I sat at the bar and ordered a singer. The bartender nodded and slid the bottle across the counter without a word. I took a sip and tried to look like I belonged there. That's when I felt a hand on my shoulder, light, warm. I turned around and there she was. She smiled at me. Big, bright, beautiful. Her eyes were dark and shining under the lights. Her hair was long and black, falling over one shoulder. She wore a tight red dress that hugged every curve. She looked young, really young. But she didn't look away when I stared. She just kept smiling. "You alone?" she asked. Her English was broken but soft. I nodded. "Yeah, just arrived a few days ago. First time Pattaya?" "First time Thailand." She laughed like I'd said something charming. "You very brave." "Come alone." I didn't feel brave. I felt old and out of place. But I smiled back anyway. "Guess so." She sat down on the stool next to me without asking. She was close enough that I could smell her perfume, something sweet and floral. She touched my arm lightly, casually, like we'd known each other for years. "My name, Noosh," she said. "What's your name?" "Terry," I said. My voice sounded rough. I cleared my throat. "I'm Terry." "Terry," she repeated, drawing it out like she was tasting it. "I like. Strong name." I felt something I hadn't felt in years, wanted, seen, alive. I bought her a drink. Then another. She laughed at everything I said. She asked me where I was from, what I did, why I came to Thailand. I told her I was retired. A carpenter, divorced, looking for a change. She nodded like she understood. Like she'd heard it all before but still cared. "You lonely, Terry?" she asked softly, leaning in close. I didn't know how to answer that without sounding pathetic, so I just nodded. She put her hand on mine. Her skin was soft and warm. "Me too," she whispered. "Lonely very hard." We talked for 2 hours. She told me she was 23. She worked part-time at the bar, but dreamed of opening her own beauty shop one day. She said her family lived up north in a small village. She sent money home every month. She said she didn't like working in bars, but she had no choice. She said most men who came to Pattaya only wanted one thing and then they left. She said I seemed different. "You have kind face," she said, touching my cheek. "Not same like other man." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her, so I did. When the bar started to close, she asked if I wanted to go for a walk. I said yes. We walked along the beach. The waves were gentle, and the moon was bright. She held my hand. Her fingers laced through mine like they belonged there. She told me she liked older men because they were more respectful, more caring. She said young Thai men only wanted to play. She said she wanted someone serious, someone real. I asked her if she wanted to see me again. She smiled and said, "Of course, Terry, I like you." I went back to my hotel that night and couldn't sleep. I felt like a teenager again, nervous, excited, stupid, but I didn't care. The next morning she texted me. I didn't even know she had my number until I saw her message pop up on my phone. It said, "Good morning, Terry, I miss you already." I smiled so hard my face hurt. We spent the next 2 weeks together. Every single day, she took me to places tourists didn't go, little street food stalls where the locals ate, temples tucked away in quiet neighborhoods, a market by the river where she taught me how to bargain in Thai. She held my hand everywhere we went. She kissed my cheek in public. She made me feel like I wasn't invisible anymore. At night, we'd go back to my hotel. She'd curl up next to me on the bed, and we'd watch Thai dramas on TV. I didn't understand a word, but I didn't care. I just wanted her there, close, warm, real. One afternoon, we were sitting at a beachside restaurant eating fried rice when she got quiet. I asked her what was wrong. She shook her head and smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Nothing, Terry, okay. Come on," I said gently. "You can tell me." She looked down at her plate and sighed. I worry about my mama. She's sick, need medicine. But I not have money right now." "What's wrong with her?" I asked. "Her heart. She needs see doctor, but doctor costs too much." I felt my chest tighten. I reached across the table and took her hand. "How much do you need?" She pulled her hand away and shook her head quickly. "No, Terry, I not ask you for money. I'm not that girl." "I know you're not," I said, "but I want to help." "How much?" She hesitated. Then she said, "Maybe 20,000 baht. But Terry, I cannot." "It's fine," I said. "I'll give it to you." Her eyes filled with tears. She reached across the table and grabbed my hand, holding it tight. "You're really good man, Terry. I never meet man like you, never." That night I went to an ATM and withdrew 20,000 baht, about 800 Australian dollars. I put it in an envelope and gave it to her. She cried. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. She kissed me on the mouth and said, "Thank you, Terry, thank you so much. You my hero." I felt like I'd finally done something right, something that mattered. I extended my trip another 2 weeks, then another. I called Megan and told her I was staying in Thailand a bit longer. She sounded concerned. "Dad, are you okay? You're not acting like yourself." "I'm fine, love. Just enjoying the weather." "It's not about some girl, is it?" I laughed it off. "No, Meg, nothing like that. Just relaxing." But it was about a girl. It was all about her. Nooh, my beautiful, sweet, kind Nooh. I couldn't imagine going back to Australia and leaving her behind. The thought of returning to that empty unit, that silent life, made me feel sick. So I made a decision. I flew back to Victoria, packed up my things, sorted out my pension paperwork, and told my landlord I wasn't renewing my lease. Megan came over the day before I left. "Dad, this is crazy," she said, standing in the middle of my half-empty living room. "You barely know this woman." "I know enough," I said, folding a shirt into my suitcase. You've known her for what, a month?" 5 weeks. 5 weeks, Dad, that's nothing." "What if she's just using you?" I stopped folding and looked at her. "Why would you say that?" "Because it happens. All the time. Older Western men go to Thailand, meet a young girl and—" "Nooh isn't like that," I said, cutting her off. "She's not some bar girl. She's kind. She's real. She cares about me." Megan sighed and rubbed her face. "I just don't want you to get hurt. I'm 68 years old, Meg. If I don't take a chance now, when will I?" She didn't have an answer for that. She hugged me at the airport and made me promise to call her every week. I promised, but I knew I wouldn't. I didn't want her judgment. I didn't want her doubt. I just wanted to be happy. And Nooh made me happy. I landed back in Pattaya 3 weeks later. Nooh was waiting for me at the airport. She ran to me and threw her arms around my neck. "Terry, you come back." I so happy. I held her tight and kissed the top of her head. "I told you I would." I rented a small apartment in a quiet building near the beach. It wasn't much. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a balcony with a view of the street. But it was ours. Nooh moved in within a week. She brought a suitcase full of clothes, a few photos, and a stuffed teddy bear she said her mother gave her when she was a kid. She set everything up like she'd always lived there. She cooked for me. She cleaned. She made the place feel like a home. She quit her job at the karaoke bar. She said she didn't need to work anymore because I took care of her. And I did. Gladly, I sent money to her family every month. She said her mother's medicine was expensive. Her younger brother needed school fees. Her father needed help fixing the roof. I gave her whatever she asked for. I didn't mind. I had my pension. I had savings. And I had her. That was enough. We fell into a routine. Morning coffee on the balcony. Afternoon walks on the beach. Evenings watching TV or eating dinner at cheap local restaurants. It was simple, quiet, perfect. One night, a man knocked on my door. He was older, British, with a thick grey beard and a beer belly. He lived in the unit next to mine. "Good evening, mate," he said, extending a hand. "I'm Barry, just moved in last month." I shook his hand. "Terry, nice to meet you." We stood there awkwardly for a moment. Then he nodded toward my apartment. "Got yourself a little lady, eh?" "Yeah," I said, smiling. "Her name's Nooch." He nodded slowly. "She seems nice." "She is." Barry scratched his beard and looked down the hallway. "Listen, mate, I don't mean to pry, but just be careful, yeah?" I frowned. "Careful about what?" "These girls, well, they're not always what they seem. I've seen it happen 100 times. Bloke comes over, falls in love, gives her everything, and then one day she's gone. Just keep your eyes open, all right?" I forced a smile. "Thanks for the advice, Barry, but Nooch isn't like that." He shrugged. "All right, mate. Just looking out for you." I closed the door and went back inside. Nooch was sitting on the couch, flipping through a Thai magazine. She looked up and smiled. "Who that?" she asked. "Just the neighbor, Barry. He nice?" "Yeah," I said, sitting down next to her. "He's all right." But Barry's words stuck with me. I tried to push them away, but they lingered. That night I watched Nooch as she slept. Her face was peaceful, beautiful, innocent. I told myself Barry was wrong. He didn't know her like I did. He didn't see the way she looked at me, the way she held my hand, the way she whispered my name in the dark. I reached over and brushed a strand of hair from her face. She stirred slightly but didn't wake. I kissed her forehead and closed my eyes. Everything was fine. Everything was perfect. But then things started to change. Small things at first. Nooch began disappearing for hours without explanation. She'd say she was going to the market or visiting a friend, but she'd come back hours later with nothing. No groceries. No bags, nothing. I'd ask her where she'd been and she'd wave it off. "Just walking, Terry. I like walk." "For 4 hours? Why you ask so much question? You not trust me?" "I do trust you." Then stop asking." I stopped asking. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to lose her. So I let it go. But then I found a second phone. It was hidden in her purse. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for the TV remote. I opened her purse thinking maybe she'd put it in there by mistake. And there it was. A small black phone I'd never seen before. I pulled it out and stared at it. It was turned off. I almost turned it on, but then I heard the door open. I shoved the phone back in her purse and closed it quickly. Nooch walked in carrying a plastic bag with a bottle of water inside. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "Where'd you go?" 7-Eleven, she said, holding up the bag. "You want water?" "No, I'm good." "Hey, I noticed you have 2 phones." She froze. Just for a second. Then she smiled. "Oh, that old phone. For my family. Sometime they call. Cheaper that way. Why don't you just use your regular phone?" She shrugged. "I told you cheaper. Different SIM card." It made sense. Sort of. But something about the way she said it felt off. I let it go anyway. I didn't want to push. I didn't want to be that guy. The jealous, paranoid old man. But the doubts kept growing. She started asking for more money. Her mother needed another surgery. Her brother's school fees went up. She needed money for a visa application to visit Australia. I gave her everything she asked for. I withdrew money from my savings. I sent wire transfers. I handed her envelopes of cash, and every time she cried and thanked me and told me I was the best man she'd ever known. But she stopped being affectionate. She didn't hold my hand anymore. She didn't curl up next to me on the couch. At night, she'd lie on the far edge of the bed with her back to me. If I tried to touch her, she'd pull away and say she was tired. She spent more time on her phone, texting, smiling at the screen. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd say it was her friend or her cousin. She never let me see the screen. One night, I reached over and touched her shoulder while she was texting. She flinched and pulled the phone away. "What you doing?" She snapped. "Nothing. I just wanted to—" "You always watching me." "Why you always watching?" "I'm not watching you, Nook. I need space, Terry, okay?" "I need space. I didn't understand." "Space from what? From me? We lived together. We were supposed to be in love, but I didn't say any of that." I just nodded and turned over. I lay there in the dark, listening to her thumbs tapping on the screen, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Alone. A few weeks later, I ran into a man outside my building. He was Thai, maybe in his 50s, wearing an expensive-looking polo shirt and gold rings on both hands. He was smoking a cigarette near the entrance. When he saw me, he smiled and waved. "You Terry?" he asked in decent English. I stopped. "Yeah, who are you?" "I some chai." "Anush, uncle." He extended his hand. I shook it. His grip was firm. Too firm. "Oh," I said. "Nice to meet you. Noosh, tell me about you." "She say you good man. Take care of her." "I try," I said. He nodded, still smiling. "You have good heart, Terry. Not lucky girl. Her family very grateful. You help so much." "It's no problem," I said. "I care about her." "I know." "I see." He took a drag from his cigarette and looked at me with sharp, calculating eyes. "You have good job in Australia." "I'm retired," I said. Retired. Good pension?" I hesitated. "Yeah, enough to live on." He nodded slowly, like he was doing math in his head. "Good, good. Nook needs support. Her family needs support. You understand?" I didn't like the way he said it. Like it was a transaction. Like I owed him something. But I just nodded. "Yeah, I understand." He clapped me on the shoulder. "Are you good man, Terry? I see you around." He walked away, leaving a trail of cigarette smoke behind him. I stood there for a moment, feeling uneasy. Something about that conversation felt wrong. But I shook it off and went inside. Nook was on the couch watching TV. I sat down next to her. "I just met your uncle," I said. She didn't look at me. "Oh, Somchai. Yeah, he said you told him about me." He seemed nice." She shrugged. "He okay?" That was it. No explanation. No details. Just silence. I wanted to ask more. Who was he really? Why was he here? Why did he talk about money like that? But I didn't. I was too afraid of the answers. That night, Nook came home late. Really late. It was past midnight. I was lying in bed, unable to sleep, when I heard the door open. She stumbled inside. I could hear her fumbling with her shoes, mumbling to herself. I got up and went to the living room. She was leaning against the wall, her makeup smudged, her dress wrinkled. She smelled like alcohol and cigarette smoke. "Nook," I said softly, "are you okay?" She looked at me and laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound. "I fine, Terry, I always fine. You're drunk. So what? I cannot have fun." "I didn't say that. I'm just worried." She pushed off the wall and stumbled toward me. Her eyes were glassy, unfocused. "You worry too much, Terry. You always worry." "Where were you?" "Out with friend." "Which friend?" "Why you care? You're not my father. I'm not trying to be your father. I just—" She cut me off, her voice suddenly deeper, harsher. "You think you know me? You don't know anything, Terry, nothing." I stared at her. There was something different about her. Something I couldn't put my finger on. Her voice, her posture, the way she was looking at me. Like she was someone else entirely. She laughed again, shook her head and stumbled toward the bedroom. She collapsed onto the bed, fully clothed, and passed out within seconds. I stood in the doorway watching her. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. Something was wrong, I knew it, but I didn't know what. I went back to the couch and sat there in the dark, staring at nothing. I didn't sleep. The next morning she was cold, distant, she barely looked at me. I made her coffee and set it on the table in front of her. She took a sip and said nothing. "Are you okay?" I asked. "I fine." You don't seem fine. She slammed the cup down. Coffee sloshed over the side. Why you always ask me that? I say I fine. I fine. I'm just trying to help. I not need your help, Terry. I need you leave me alone. I felt like I'd been slapped. I sat down across from her and tried to keep my voice steady. If I did something wrong, just tell me, please. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she stood up and walked to the bedroom. She closed the door behind her. I sat there staring at my own untouched coffee, feeling like the walls were closing in. That afternoon, Barry knocked on my door. I opened it and he took one look at my face and sighed. Rough day, mate? I nodded. Come on. Let's get a beer. We went to a small bar down the street. It was quiet. Just a few old men playing pool in the corner. Barry ordered us 2 changs and we sat at a table by the window. You all right? He asked. Yeah, I lied. Just tired. He took a long sip of his beer and leaned back in his chair. I'm not going to say I told you so, Terry, but what? He looked at me seriously. You need to ask yourself what you really know about her. I frowned. What do you mean? I mean, have you met her family? Have you seen where she's from? Have you asked her the hard questions? She tells me things, does she? Or does she tell you what you want to hear? I didn't answer. Barry sighed and leaned forward. Look, mate, I've been here 10 years. I've seen blokes like you come and go. Good men, kind men. They fall in love, they give everything. And then one day they wake up and realize they've been played. I don't want that to happen to you. Nook isn't like that. Maybe not, but you need to be sure, because once you're in too deep, it's hard to get out. I finished my beer in silence. Barry didn't push. He just sat with me. When I got home, Nook was gone. There was no note, no message. I called her. No answer. I texted her. Nothing. She came back 3 hours later. She didn't explain where she'd been. She just went straight to the bedroom and closed the door. I stood in the living room staring at that closed door, and I felt something break inside me. I was losing her. Or maybe I never had her at all. A week later, I was looking for batteries. The TV remote had died, and I needed to replace them. I checked the kitchen drawers, nothing. I checked the bathroom, nothing. Then I went to the bedroom. Nook was out again. I didn't know where. I opened the top drawer of the dresser. There were clothes, a few pieces of jewelry, some makeup. And then I saw it. A plastic card tucked under a scarf. I pulled it out. It was an ID card, Thai government issued. I looked at the name. It wasn't Nook. It was a man's name, something I couldn't even pronounce. I looked at the photo. Shorter hair, no makeup, sharper features, but the face was the same. It was her or him. I didn't know anymore. My hands started shaking. I dropped the card on the bed and backed away. My chest felt tight. My head was spinning. I sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at the card. I stared at it for 10 minutes, maybe longer. Then I picked up my phone and Googled things I was embarrassed to type. I read articles. I looked at photos. I read forums, and slowly, horribly, everything made sense. The voice, the secrecy, the way she never fully undressed in daylight, the way she avoided certain touches. It all made sense. I felt sick, not because of who she was, but because she lied. For 2 years, she let me fall in love with a version of her that didn't exist. She took my money, my time, my heart, and she never told me the truth. I heard the door open. She was home. I stood up, still holding the ID card, and walked into the living room. She was taking off her shoes. She looked up and saw me. She saw the card in my hand. Her face went pale. Terry, who are you? I asked, my voice cracked. She stared at me. Then she looked down. You go through my things? Who are you? I repeated. She didn't answer. I held up the card. This is you, isn't it? She took a deep breath and looked at me. Her eyes were cold, hard. Yes, why didn't you tell me? She shrugged. I never asked. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I never asked. Are you serious? What you want me to say, Terry? You want me say sorry? Okay, sorry, but it not change anything. You lied to me for 2 years. I not lie. I just not tell you everything. That's the same thing. She crossed her arms. Why you so angry? I still same person. Nothing changed. Everything changed. I shouted. I never shouted, but I couldn't hold it in anymore. You let me believe you were someone you're not. You let me fall in love with you. You took my money. I take your money because you give it, she shot back. You so lonely, Terry, you so desperate. You want someone love you so bad you not even care who I am. You just want someone there, anyone. I stood there speechless, because she was right. And that hurt more than anything. She shook her head and went to the bedroom. I heard drawers opening, closing. She came back out with a suitcase. She started packing, slowly, methodically, like she'd done it 100 times before. What are you doing? I asked. I leaving. Nuh, my name not Nuh, she said flatly. You never even know my real name. I felt tears burning my eyes. Please, just talk to me. She stopped packing and looked at me. What you want me say, Terry? You want me say I love you? I never love you. I need money. You have money. That it, simple. That's not true. It is true. You too old. Too boring, too sad. I stay because you pay me. Because you easy. But I done now. I tired. There's someone else, isn't there? She didn't deny it. She just looked at me. Yes, his name Zhao, he younger. He handsome. He my boyfriend. 2 years, Terry. 2 years he my boyfriend. You just the one who pay. I sat down on the couch. I couldn't stand anymore. She finished packing and zipped up her suitcase. She walked toward the door. Then she stopped and turned around. You knew, Terry, deep down. You just didn't want to be alone. She opened the door and left. It clicked shut behind her. I sat there in the silence. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't move. I just sat there, staring at the closed door, feeling nothing, feeling everything. The next morning, Barry knocked on my door. I didn't answer. He knocked again. Then I heard his voice. Terry, mate, you all right? I opened the door. He took one look at me and his face fell. She left, I said. He nodded. I figured. You were right. I'm sorry, mate. He came inside and sat with me. He didn't say I told you so. He didn't lecture me. He just sat there. After a while, he went to the kitchen and made tea. He set a cup in front of me. I didn't drink it. I just stared at it. What do I do now? I asked. You survive, Barry said. That's all you can do. Weeks passed. I stayed in the apartment. I didn't go out much. I didn't eat much. I walked to the beach sometimes and sat on the sand watching the waves. I thought about Nuh, or whoever she really was. I thought about all the money I'd given her, all the promises I'd believed, all the lies I'd swallowed because I was too afraid to see the truth. I thought about Megan, about Janet, about the life I'd left behind in Victoria. I'd run away from loneliness and found something worse. I'd found hope. And then I'd lost it. One afternoon, I sat on the balcony with a cup of coffee and my phone. I opened a blank message to Megan. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I started typing. I told her everything. The whole story. How I'd met Nuh, how I'd fallen in love, how I'd given her everything, how she'd lied, how she'd left. I typed it all out. Then I read it back. And I deleted it. I couldn't send it. I couldn't admit to my daughter that I'd been that stupid, that desperate, that blind. So I just sat there, holding my phone, feeling the weight of it all. Barry stopped by later that day. He sat down across from me and crossed his arms. You should go home, mate. I know. So why don't you? I didn't have an answer. Maybe I did, but I didn't want to say it. I stayed because going home meant admitting I'd failed. It meant returning to that empty unit, to that silent life. And I wasn't ready for that. Not yet, Barry sighed. You can't stay here forever, Terry, not like this. I know. Then do something, anything, don't just sit here and rot. He was right. I knew he was right, but I didn't have the energy. I didn't have the will. So I just nodded and said I'd think about it, and he left. That night I sat on the beach. The sun was setting. The sky was orange and pink. It was beautiful, peaceful. I thought about everything. About Nuh, about the lies, about the money, about the 2 years I'd spent believing in something that was never real. And I realized something. I wasn't angry at her. Not really. I was angry at myself, because deep down I'd known. I'd seen the signs, the lies, the distance, the second phone, the cold nights. I'd seen it all. But I'd ignored it because I was terrified of being alone. I'd wanted to be loved so badly that I'd convinced myself it was real. Even when it wasn't, even when every instinct told me to walk away, I stayed because I was weak. Because I was desperate, because I was lonely, and that was on me. Not her, me. I stayed in Pattaya. I didn't go back to Australia. I didn't call Megan, I just existed. I walked the beach every morning. I drank coffee on the balcony every afternoon. I avoided the bars. I avoided the memories. I avoided myself. Barry checked on me once a week. He never pushed. He just made sure I was still breathing. And I was, barely. One day I sat down and wrote a letter. Not to Megan, not to Nook, just to myself. I wrote everything I couldn't say out loud. I wrote about the loneliness, the desperation, the lies I'd told myself. I wrote about how I'd given everything to someone who never asked for it because I was too afraid to be invisible. I wrote about how I'd mistaken transaction for connection, dependency for love. I wrote until my hand hurt. Then I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. I didn't need to send it. I just needed to write it, to get it out, to let it go. Months passed. The pain didn't disappear, but it changed. It became something I could carry, something I could live with. I stopped blaming Noosh. I stopped blaming myself. I just accepted it. I'd made a choice, a bad one, and I'd paid for it. But I was still here, still breathing, still alive, and maybe that was enough. I thought about going home. Back to Victoria, back to the life I'd left behind. But I wasn't ready, not yet. Maybe I never would be, because going back meant facing the truth, that I'd run away, that I'd failed, that I'd wasted 2 years chasing something that was never mine. And I didn't know if I could face that. So I stayed, in the quiet, in the heat, in the silence, alone but not lonely anymore. One evening, I was walking back from the market when I saw her. She was across the street, walking with a young Thai man. He was tall, fit, probably in his late 20s. He had his arm around her waist. She was laughing, smiling, the same smile she used to give me. They were holding hands. She looked happy, happier than she ever looked with me. I stopped walking. I just stood there on the sidewalk, watching them. She didn't see me. She was too busy looking at him. They turned a corner and disappeared. I stood there for another minute. Then I kept walking. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel jealousy. I just felt more tired, tired of caring, tired of wondering, tired of feeling like I'd lost something I never really had. That night, Barry came over with a bottle of whiskey. We sat on the balcony and drank in silence. After a while, he spoke. "You saw her today, didn't you?" I nodded. "How do you know?" "I can see it on your face, mate." I took a sip of whiskey. It burned going down. She looked happy. "Good." I looked at him. "Good?" "Yeah, good means she's moved on. Means you can too." "I don't know if I can." Barry leaned back in his chair and stared up at the sky. "You know what your problem is, Terry? You think love is supposed to save you, but it's not. Love doesn't save anyone. It just happens, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, you pick yourself up and you keep going. That's all you can do. What if I don't want to keep going?" He looked at me seriously. "Then you're already dead, mate. And I know you're not dead, because you're still here, still breathing, still fighting, even if you don't realize it." I didn't say anything. I just drank. We finished the bottle together. When Barry left, I sat alone on the balcony and watched the street below. People walked by, couples holding hands, families with kids, solo travelers with backpacks. Everyone had somewhere to go. Everyone had someone, except me, but that was okay. I was starting to realize that being alone wasn't the same as being lonely. I'd been lonely my whole life, even when I was married to Janet, even when I was with Noosh. I'd been surrounded by people and still felt invisible. But now, sitting here in the dark with no one around, I felt something different. I felt present, like I was finally seeing myself clearly for the first time, and I didn't like what I saw. But at least I was seeing it. A few days later, my phone rang. It was Megan. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Dad?" Her voice sounded worried. "Hey, Meg." "Oh my God, Dad, I've been trying to call you for weeks." Are you okay? I'm fine. You don't sound fine. What's going on? I thought about lying, telling her everything was great, but I was too tired to lie anymore. So I told her the truth, not all of it, just enough. I told her I'd been seeing someone. I told her it didn't work out. I told her I was okay, but I needed some time. She was quiet for a long moment. Dad, I'm so sorry. It's all right, love. It was my own fault. No, it's not. You just wanted to be happy. There's nothing wrong with that. I felt my throat tighten. I gave her everything, Meg, and she didn't even care. I know, Dad, I know, but that's on her. Not you. You're a good man. You deserve better. I didn't feel like a good man. I felt like a fool. But I didn't say that. We talked for another 20 minutes. She told me about her job, her kids, her life. Normal things. Safe things. It felt good to hear her voice. When we hung up, I felt lighter. Not happy, but lighter. The next morning, I went for a walk. Not to the beach, not to the market, just around the neighborhood. I walked past the karaoke bar where I'd met Nook. It was still there. Same purple lights, same music. I stopped and looked at it for a moment. Then I kept walking. I walked past the apartment building where I'd lived with her, past the restaurants where we'd eaten, past the beach where we'd held hands. I walked past all of it, and I didn't stop. I just kept going. When I got back to my apartment, I sat down and opened my laptop. I searched for flights to Australia. They were expensive, but I had enough. I could go home. I could see Megan. I could start over. Again. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I closed the laptop. I wasn't ready, not yet, but I would be. Someday I started doing small things. I went to the gym. I read books. I learned a few more Thai phrases from the woman who ran the fruit stand near my building. I made friends with an old German man named Klaus, who lived 2 floors up. We played chess twice a week. I started cooking again. Simple things, pasta, stir-fry, nothing fancy. But it felt good to do something for myself, to take care of myself. Barry noticed the change. "How you look better, mate," he said one afternoon. We were sitting at our usual spot at the bar. "I feel a bit better," I admitted. "Good, proud of you." "For what?" "For not giving up," I shrugged. "I didn't really have a choice." "Everyone has a choice, Terry. You chose to keep going. That's not nothing." Maybe he was right. Maybe it wasn't nothing. I thought about Nook less and less. Some days I didn't think about her at all. Other days she'd pop into my head and I'd feel that old ache. But it didn't last as long anymore. It didn't cut as deep. I was healing, slowly, painfully, but healing. One night I was sitting on the balcony when my phone buzzed. It was a message from a number I didn't recognize. I opened it. It said, "Terry, it's me. Can we talk?" I stared at it. I knew it was her. I didn't know how she got a new number. I didn't care. I thought about replying. I thought about asking her what she wanted. I thought about telling her to leave me alone. But then I just deleted the message. I blocked the number, and I put the phone down. There was nothing left to say. Nothing left to hear. She'd said it all the night she left, and I'd spent the last few months learning to accept it. I didn't need to go back. I didn't need closure. I already had it. I'd found it in the quiet moments, in the early morning walks, in the chess games with Klaus, in the phone calls with Megan. I'd found it in myself. I sat there on the balcony staring out at the street, and I thought about everything I'd lost. My money, my pride, my heart. But I also thought about what I'd gained, clarity, strength, a strange kind of peace. I wasn't the same man who'd arrived in Pattaya 3 years ago. I wasn't naive anymore. I wasn't desperate. I wasn't blind. I was just awake, and that was enough. I thought about going home. I thought about staying. I didn't know which was right. Maybe there was no right answer. Maybe I'd spend the rest of my life here, walking the same streets, drinking the same coffee, watching the same sunsets. Or maybe one day I'd wake up and book that flight. Go back to Victoria, see Megan, hold my grandkids, start over again, for real this time. I didn't know. And that was okay. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't running from the uncertainty. I was just living in it. I finished my coffee and stood up. The sun was setting. The sky was turning that beautiful orange and pink. I watched it for a moment. Then I went inside, closed the door, and turned off the lights. I lay down on the bed and closed my eyes. Tomorrow would come, and I'd be there to meet it. Not happy, not whole, but here. Still breathing, still trying, still alive, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough.